we were part of the journey, him discussing putting you in that role. Sheldon, is there anything else? I feel like we know Kim a little bit from the past. Anything else you want to say about Kim?
No, I mean, very, very fortunate to have someone that has knowledge of both production and finances, and the general manager, as much as it's a natural fit for her. She has some challenges being strong in the finances, and she's also remote. So, she comes in once a month. It's if not having a general manager, it's having the first general manager, having the first general manager that's remote, having the first general manager, so that, I guess I'm fortunate, but it's been interesting to watch the path, and I think it's worked out well so far.
Kim, if you could explain the reporting relationships of the people on your team, because I understand sales does not report into you. Is that correct?
So yes, right now sales reports to Sheldon as the sales manager. So for me, I report to Sheldon, but ultimately I'm accountable to the board. So because this is also a newly developed circumstance for Sheldon, having someone else who has a little more power to make changes in his company, making me accountable to the board also made Sheldon accountable to those decisions. So that was a really good thing for me. But then as far as reporting of other managers, basically inside operations, field management, finance management, they all report directly to me.
Human resources.
Human resources, yes.
So marketing?
No, marketing reports directly to Sheldon.
Okay.
But and you can look at that either way, as looking at the sales and marketing package, where sales and marketing would report to one person, or you can look at it as, as Shayla is not only the marketing manager, but she's also on the board of directors. It would make it a little bit difficult to have that position report to me. I mean, Shayla and I consult all the time and consult on her budget, all of those things.
Yeah.
And fortunately, Shayla is the type of person that never makes a head-on decision without consulting other people to make sure that they're comfortable with her decision. So it makes it a really easy dynamic for us, because there is a lot of communications. Shayla makes those marketing decisions, but she generally, will run everything through, say, hey, I'm thinking of doing this. Do we have the funding to do this? What are your thoughts on it? So although, like I said, it's not a direct report, it's a very close relationship where she is at least involving me in the decisions that she's making, with Sheldon. So there's a lot of communication that happens. We don't have although we each have a role and a position content document that says what our position is and what our clearly defined role is, we don't really compartmentalize our positions. We work very well together. So everything that I do in terms of the general manager, whether Sheldon technically needs to make that decision or not, I run it through him anyway. Many times in our calls with Colin will say, well, Kim, isn't that your decision? And I'll say, well, yes, it's my decision, but I still like to run those things through Sheldon. So if it's, the matter of someone getting terminated or a change in how we do something, I still, Sheldon has 40 years knowledge in this company. I couldn't imagine just blanketly making a decision without consulting him.
Sure. I mean, that's a decision matrix. You consult. It's a consultative decision-making process.
Right.
Sure. Will sales eventually report into the general manager position?
Yeah. So eventually they will, but it will be more of the sales manager will report to the general manager. So it won't be direct reports. I think that just gets into the same scenario like you have in the field. When you have too many direct reports, you become an ineffective manager.
Yeah. What was your biggest challenge stepping into this role?
I think honestly, the biggest challenge is, I won't say it's being remote, because I've been remote for a long time. I think the separation of the controller's role and the general manager's role. Although the general manager needs the information from the controller, the way of decision making is very different. So as a controller, I am extremely black and white. Everything is numbers and statistical, and there's not a lot of feeling involved in that. It's very, very clear. I have very low tolerance levels. I think that is my hardest thing, is my tolerance level for imperfection as a controller is very, very different than what it needs to be as a general manager.
Interesting.
When you're dealing with numbers, and with my background in numbers between banking and corporate and a lot of auditing process, everything is very structured, very zero tolerance. You have to be able to do the job. There's no wiggle room. With a general manager, that's very different. So I think that is my greatest challenge.
What training did you have to become not as black and white, to move into this, more emotional, intelligent type stuff versus
I'm
IQ?
still working on that. Still working on that.
So is Sheldon, but that's another story.
I
So are all of us.
That's a lot of a lot of times I look to Sheldon and I say, well, how would he handle this? Because Sheldon leads more from a sometimes done is better than done right. Just getting it done is the most important thing. And being from that finance background, I had a really hard time with that. So learning through how he handles things like that has definitely been a help. And, obviously learning from previous employment situations. And then I try very hard to read a lot and to try and ask for feedback. So recently I actually sent Colin a video of a meeting that I had and said, please critique my performance. Don't critique the meeting, critique my performance.
Wow. That's bold.
Well, how else do you learn? I mean, I think life in general is a lesson.
Yeah.
So if we're not trying to constantly learn, I don't think we could get through.
Without sharing, anything you don't want to, was there anything that you learned through that critique?
I actually haven't received it yet. So no, not yet. Colin was on vacation, but that's just something that for me, that's important. Tell me how I did, because I don't see how I did. I think I did great, but someone needs to tell me where I didn't do well, where I wasn't again, it's my tolerance level that I think is my biggest challenge. So I need to learn to accept flaws. I need to learn to have lower thresholds than perfect. And I think
it's so interesting to me because sometimes leaders are too tolerant and they keep people on too long. Like they keep salespeople on too long, or a field guy on too long, or my biggest people mistakes have been keeping on people too long, who I knew were either prima donnas or just not good fits. So do you guys have that debate, you and Sheldon, on this tolerant discussion?
we do. We definitely do. We definitely do. And, sometimes I actually find myself now that sometimes I'm more tolerant than him. But I think it's, again, I think I'm trying to compensate for that overzealous need for perfection. So I definitely treat the finance and accounting staff different than the field staff. I have far more tolerance on the field staff side because I know that I have to, and that everything is not always black and white in the field. So I definitely improving on that, but that is my work in progress and my biggest challenge.
Did you have a hard time gaining the respect as a new leader?
No, I don't think so, because I think it also was a natural progression for us. When I came in as controller, that was a new role for Stewart Painting. It was very different for them to have someone who had a say in things. Stewart Painting always had a bookkeeper that reported to Sheldon, and Sheldon always had final say. And when I started, Sheldon made it very clear that he would default certain decisions to the controller. That's what I hired her for. That's what the decision-making process is going to be. So through that process and over time, I started taking on more and more of the decision-making and more of the, I guess, guidance of things like our field manager and things like that, where I would literally go toe to toe with Todd and say, Todd, I get it. You've been here forever, but this doesn't work. And we will fight until until the bell rings, but it's not going to work. So I think when we actually made the decision to move me into the general manager's role, people said, well, she's been making those decisions anyway. So it really doesn't change. So it just formalized something that was already happening. And I think that, ultimately, I had already gained the respect of most of our employees with my decision-making process, with just, I may be looking for perfection, but I'm also very fair. Every decision that I make needs to be an equitable one. And I think people understand that with me. They may not always like my decisions, but they do know that a fair decision was made. So I think it wasn't that hard of a transition.
So you didn't come to Stewart Painting with painting knowledge.
No, none.
Okay, so what would you say to a few of the people on the call here? I know Bob Connor, you're thinking about the future GM. John, you might be Johnny Mack. Mike, you may. What do you know? John Deck has someone already that's working in the business. But what would you say to people that don't have a GM and are going to be looking for a GM about that experience in trades versus experience in management?
Well, I can't say that I had no experience in trades. So I worked in the building materials industry for a lot of years. So I do have, that aspect of it. As far as daily operations of a small business like this, I didn't have a lot of that. But I think, one, you're looking for someone who can apply their knowledge and skills from whatever industry they were in. Being able to say that I started my finance career in banking, which gave me that very solid zero tolerance for finance. But then I worked in the medical manufacturing industry for a long time. So we had multiple manufacturing plants throughout the company. That taught me a little bit of tolerance, but also taught me more of the management side and being able to pull all of that experience into one place. I think the key with being a general manager is not necessarily knowing the product you're selling, but knowing the people under you and how to deal with those people and how to put systems in place that can scale from $5 million to $20 million or flip from industry to industry. It's not so much the difference between knowing paint and knowing shoes. It's what in each of those businesses is the same. Well, people are people, no matter what industry they work in. There's only certain ways that you can deal with people. Sales is sales. Yes, there are some differences in the type of sales, but it all ends up the same. If you don't have sales, you don't have a company. If you don't have production supporting sales, then sales can't make their sales. And so regardless of the industry that you're in, all of that is transferable. So being able to find someone who knows and can pick and choose those transferable skills, I think is huge.
You getting that, Bob Connor? Has it been difficult for Sheldon to not swoop in at times? In other words, I'll ask Sheldon, has it been hard to let go? You strike me as a person who's done it very well. That's a rare compliment, Sheldon. You've done it really well. I mean, you seem to you honor the board, you honor the GM, but instinctually it must be hard because you want to jump in at times. Has there been that dynamic that you two have faced?
From my end, I have to work very, very hard at removing myself from, I've removed myself from meetings. I make sure that I have to say something or I want to say something and I think it should come from a general manager and not me. Then I'll text Kim in that meeting or I'll email her. And I make it very clear when someone comes to me and they think they're overriding Kim and I go, you're looking at the wrong guy. This is a Kim decision. So I've been trying very hard to try to stay out of it, but
That's terrific.
I'm sure I slip.
He does very well. I have to be honest, he does very, very well. And a lot of times he will shoot me a text or he will shoot me an email. I mean, yeah, sometimes he slips up, especially if it's something that he's passionate about, but that's expected. But I think in general, he is very good about keeping clear directives and keeping clear direction, especially with, managers or other staff members who want to go to him. He will change that direction.
You stepped into this role knowing that after a few years you would find a successor, at least I think. Is that part of the plan, or do you just like it too much that you're just going to hang out for another 5 or 10 years?
Well, no, originally it was put in that I would do it for 3 to 5 years and then retire. and let's face it, life situations change. So, my goal is to still do it for 3 to 5 years. And then when we're coming into that year 4, or actually, my goal is 5 years, but when we're coming into year 4, to have very serious discussions with Sheldon about his direction, is he still ready to move on? And then if I'm not ready to retire, is there still a role in the company? There may not be for me. And I accepted that with the role.
I might just interject here a little bit. So you talk about the relationship between the board and the general manager. That was one of the contract negotiations that when Jared brought that in, Jared said, okay, you're done in 3 years. And Kim came back and countered, no, I'm not done in 3 years. I would never take this role. So they went back and forth, and Kim was like, how'd you even come up with 3 years? And that's when I said, well, I thought from a past coach that's what so there was some conversation about that, because we couldn't have me step out and Kim step out at the same time.
Right.
Very interesting. Let's open this up. Let's get some dialogue from some other people on the call. At the very least, a takeaway. Mike, what's your takeaway? I know you're always watching Sheldon. What's Sheldon up to? There's some good lessons today, huh?
Well, I'm very impressed. It sounds to me like Kim and Sheldon are 2 peas in a pod. Kim speaks very authoritatively about the business on all aspects of it, as Sheldon has for years. So I could see why you two get along very well and can communicate very well, and why Sheldon would trust your competency level for what you're doing. So that's very impressive, Sheldon, that you were able to find Kim and make this whole thing work. So I mean, that the reality is, how do you find a Kim?
Johnny Mack.
I just got a question. Would it be okay if have you done a disc profile?
I have.
Could that be shared?
Yeah.
I mean, I would just
I
be
haven't done one
curious
in
to
several
see.
years, but yes, I have done them. I think I did one when I originally started for Stewart Painting. So that was probably about 8 or so years ago.
Yeah.
I
I've known Sheldon. Go ahead, Sheldon.
I can't quite remember, but I know this. It's got to be a high D.
I would not. We know what yours is. I would love to just see it, Kim, just to see what it is.
I'm gonna look for it here. I've got about
I honestly would like to see it in
look for it.
comparison to Sheldon, just so we could see the two, to understand how that fits, because I think that is a huge part of this. Is somehow the two of your personalities fit.
Yeah,
right?
I agree with you very much. Our personalities do fit. I mean, part of that is I have a huge respect for Sheldon for the industry knowledge that he has, for the fact that he has been in business for 40 years. And I never lose sight of that. And I think that's a huge part of it, is that, ultimately I may think I'm right, but ultimately I know that his industry knowledge and his experience is far greater than mine. So regardless of whether I think I'm right or not, it's always a look at how would Sheldon do it.
So Sheldon, I'm just curious to know, did you bring Brian in when you brought Kim in, as far as having him look at her personality and her profile to see how it would fit with yours?
No, you mean when she first came to my company?
Yeah.
No.
Colin.
Well, there was when she first came to our company, I had a headhunter. We got her from a headhunter. And did I train you off? Did you get trained off site, Kim?
I did. So I interviewed with the headhunter, and then I interviewed with Colin, and then I interviewed.
Colin was in recruiting at that time.
Mhm.
Wow.
Yeah.
That was a while ago.
Yep. So the headhunter had reached out to me, had a great couple interviews with her. Then I had an interview with Colin, and then I went and met Sheldon.
She trained off site for 2 weeks, and then we removed the person. She walked in the next day and started.
So I basically just took, it was a week to get used to the software systems and look at what they were currently doing. I actually did it at the hotel conference room next door, so Sheldon could pop in regularly throughout the day. Met some of the key players at the time, and really tried to harness what I could about the business and the systems, and then walked in the next week and just hit the ground running.
Yes, John Van
Jim, I have a couple of questions. One, in your role as controller, did you also handle HR duties?
Yes.
And
So we had an HR person underneath me, but I handled anything that was compliance related because I do have a background in that. But for the first couple of years, it was just me. So I did the finance and the HR. Then we hired an HR person, and she came in with a really strong background, so I could step away from that. Currently, we're back to a situation where, I am back to handling the compliance end of it. So, and again, that's just because that was in my background.
on the finance side, what were the decisions that you needed to be able to make in your role as controller?
Biggest thing was, cutting spending. That was the biggest thing. And then giving true metrics of what you can and can't spend on materials or equipment and getting people to stick to those and to understand that really is what drives your business. Sheldon knew how to read a financial and know what his GP was and know what his net profit was and know that they weren't lining up, but it was having someone else who was there every day to be able to put those limits in place. When you're the president of a small company, you wear so many hats that you don't have time to look at those fine details and put those limits in place. When someone calls you and says, I need this and I need it to do my job, you just say, okay, get it done, because that's all you have time to do. But in my role, I had time to do the deep dive and say, why are we spending so much money on this equipment? Why is this equipment disappearing? Why is our materials 20% when no one else in the industry is anywhere near that? So I had time to look at those things. Where's all of our material loss? Things like that as an owner, you don't have time to do.
You're hitting on a really important topic here, the difference between a bookkeeper and a controller. And controllers actually, looking at the numbers and asking why. Bookkeepers do journal entries. They want things to end up. But you, which is why Sheldon gave you authority,
Right.
because you were looking at them with a critical eye. So everybody else in the call, understand that difference is huge. I see it. I get numbers from bookkeepers and I say, well, it's pretty clear they didn't look at this before they sent it to me, because labor is only 10% of revenue. So they probably missed a payroll or something like that. They just, it's interesting. Scott, let's hear from you up there. What's your thought on this topic here, or additional questions you have for Kim?
Yeah, I think this is a great idea. It actually made it more clear to me about the importance of having a board in general. And I think Sheldon is blessed to have Kim there, and the way I like her mindset and the way she thinks about things. And also what Mike said about, actually might have been John, that said you really have to plan this out ahead of time, have a vision, and then to have people help you implement it. And that seems to be what's happening. So it's really exciting that you have this roadmap for us.
That's the best thing that Sheldon, you did, for us. Is this is going back 2 or 3 years ago. You laid out a 10-year plan, and you're very intentionally following that plan. So really well done. It really is. Bob Penrod, if you're still with us, love to hear from you, get your questions or comments.
Yeah, I am actually. Very interesting, and looks like a lot of hard work was put into this, and a lot of success as well. For me, I guess I really didn't think about what this would look like for me, but in hearing this, it's something I'm not ready to take on right now, but it's certainly something that I want to start planning and thinking about for the future, for sure. Because I like the idea, the concept of it. I think it's going to help, my son and sons in both, sense of security of making decisions like what was discussed. And it's always checks and balances, having that, counsel or, that other voice. Sometimes, in business, it happens where you feel like you're on an island with some, with a board or committee or what have you. It gives you somebody to bounce something off of and hear other perspectives. So I think it's a great thing. Like I said, I'm not ready to take it on now, but I think I will be for 26, be ready to start thinking and planning for sure.
Yeah, that's what I'll be doing. As I start to give my kids ownership, I'm going to start to give them some ownership next year. And as I start to do that, I want the formalization of a board, so they feel the responsibility of ownership. You know, a lot of us who started businesses have urgency and the stress of meeting a payroll and various things like that. And I hear a lot that the next generation or the third generation doesn't have that same urgency. I think a board would be a good structure to make sure that the business is being looked at with the right urgency and accountability. And a GM is just an amazing, like, you know, Kim, you're paving the way for a lot of other companies who want to put a GM in place and are trying to figure out what the right profile is and how they're supposed to behave with a GM, like how all of a sudden what's their role and how they have to let go.
Right.
Any other questions or comments you want to ask Kim or Sheldon related to either one of the topics?
I was thinking that since Kim, you've been in the business for quite a while and sort of done different jobs and worked your way up, there was a familiarity with you when you stepped into the GM role, which seems
Absolutely.
it's a big role. Do you have any ideas of what it would be like, or maybe what? I'm just thinking, in my case, I would be bringing somebody in from the outside who doesn't have experience with our company, with my family, and I'm just kind of wondering what do you think the most important thing is in bringing that general manager in?
So I think the biggest, most important thing when you're bringing someone new in, especially in a very important managerial role like that, is that they come in with the expectation of learning how you run your business and running it your way until they have spent enough time to gain the trust of you and all of your employees, learn your systems, and make true decisions about what they think they want to change. I think the biggest failure that happens when companies bring in high-level management is that they come in and they're gung-ho and they want to make every change in the world. They haven't earned anyone's trust. They haven't learned how the business has been doing business for the last 20 or 30 years, and they just want to change things. And then what happens is they lose the trust of the employees first, who say, who is this new employee who's come in and just changed everything without even knowing how we do things? And then they also lose the trust of the owner because the owner sees that they're failing with the staff. And then you have that level of, well, how am I going to trust them to handle this when I'm not around, when there's all this change in culture or discontent or whatever? So I think that coming in slow and learning before they start making changes. Now, they can have the authority to make decisions when someone needs to be terminated or anything like that. I'm not saying bring them in with no authority, but a very slow change in process or those type of things, I think is key.
That's terrific. Kim, thank you. And
You're
Sheldon, thank you
welcome.
for bringing your team on today. And it's fun watching you go through this process and paving the way.
Yeah, it's a
Appreciate
lot of fun.
that. Any final comments for our friends from Cape Cod? And actually, you're down in Georgia, right?
I am right now, yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
When's the next time you're coming up to the Cape? Enjoy some of the summer up there.
Probably a couple weeks. Yeah, no, I can't miss the entire summer. I need my lobster roll.
Yes.
I have one question about Jared Bias. That seems like quite an undertaking to put a board together like this. Is it a 2 or 3 year project with him before he can let go of reins, or
Well,
how does that
I
work?
think that is your decision. You can decide to do a board in 2 years or 3 years, or you can be on the long curve and decide to take longer. It's, I'm on the 5-yard line and I need to score a touchdown, or I'm on my own 5-yard line and I got to go the whole length of the field. So there's 2 different game plans. Either one you can accomplish. I went with the longer one because I want to see failure. I want to see success. I want to see failure, and I want to live through them both, right? And then, so I just chose the longer one. I decided to bite the bullet, make the decision, do a timeline, and then in that process, I knew I had to keep my timeline. Either way, Mike, you can do it.
Thank you both. Thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot.
All right,
Thank you for
everybody.
having me.
Thank you.